Hi, hi everyone. I'm Katie Mappa. I am with the policy department here at CWLA. And so we are thrilled to be hosting this webinar for you today. I'm so glad you're all here. We here at CWLA, of course, have been focusing a lot on the child tax credit and the boost in that has provided for children and families that we care about. So today's webinar is focused on helping kids and families to access all of the funds from 2021 through filing taxes. We want to emphasize that this is not a webinar to make you a tax expert. You do not have to have expertise in this. This is to provide resources and general knowledge of where families can go to get that help and to get that expertise. So this project, it's a partnership between the Coalition on Human Needs and Partnership for America's Children. They've put together a toolkit of resources and are going to take you through everything that they have. And so today, Alini is going to be our presenter. As she mentioned, for anyone that missed kind of her opening, you will get all of the links and all the resources and everything that goes into the chat as a follow-up email. This is being recorded. And then Zoe is here as our technical expert. So if you're having tech issues or if you have a question, you can direct that to them and they'll help you with it. And so with that, I just want to say thank you from CWLA for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to Alini.
Great. Thank you so much, Katie. Zoe, if you can start. Yes, perfect. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We're really happy to partner with CWLA to bring this information to you at this time. And as Katie mentioned, we are going to be going over the 2021 expanded child tax credit and everything you need to know to be informed, to either share with your organizations or clients, to direct them to the experts that can help them access and get the credit. Next slide. So quickly, some of you might already know us. This particular project is a partnership with the Coalition on Human Needs, which is an alliance of national groups, including service providers, faith groups, policy experts, and labor, civil rights, and other advocates. And our mission is to advocate at the federal level to meet the needs of people with low incomes. Next slide. And we are working on this alongside with our partner, the Partnership for America's Children, which has over 50 members. It's a multi-issue child advocacy organizations across 40 states. And their mission is to support its network of state and community child advocacy organizations in effective advocacy. Next slide. So let's get right to it. What is the expanded CTC? So the CTC was expanded through the American Rescue Plan Act for tax year 2021. The expanded CTC is projected to cut the number of children in poverty by about 40% and projected to lift approximately 1.1 million children above half the poverty line. And essentially, you can help families claim the credit just by knowing more about it and knowing where to send people and who is eligible. Next slide. So families were eligible to receive half of the CTC in 2021 and half when they file taxes this year, or the full credit if they didn't get advance payments directly or through the non-filer portal. The credit was $3,600 per child ages 0 to 5 and $3,000 per child age 6 through 17. And this was previously $2,000. So it's a pretty significant increase. And there's no minimum income requirement. Families with no earned income are eligible for the full credit. And the credit is fully refundable, meaning that families are eligible for the full credit amount, even if they don't owe taxes. Next slide. And this is just an example of how much money is actually at stake and on the table. We're looking here at an example of a family with one adult, a 4-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 15-year-old child. In total for the 2021 CTC, the family would receive $9,600. And additionally, the family may qualify for additional money through stimulus payments or other tax credits that have been expanded and are available. And what is the challenge around the CTC and getting this information out? So 4 million or more children are at risk of missing out on the CTC payments. This is because their families have no or very low incomes. They're not required to file taxes and may not have filed taxes recently or ever. These families may not have received the 2021 advanced CTC payments and will miss out on the credit altogether if they do not file the taxes this year. And Black and Latino kids are disproportionately excluded from the full CTC before it was even expanded, and are now more likely to miss out on it again if they're eligible, even if eligible. And a lot of the research in our work shows that trusted community organizations can really help these families claim the CTC. And again, we want to emphasize you do not have to be a tax expert to help these families. Next slide. So who is eligible for the 2021 CTC and how can families claim it? Next slide. So an adult may have a social security number or an individual taxpayer ID identification number or an ITIN, but all children must have social security numbers. And social security numbers must be valid for employment. The dependent must be the adult's child, including adopted, a grandchild or a stepchild. It can also be a younger sibling, a step sibling, a half sibling, or their descendant, or a foster child placed by a government agency. And the dependent must have lived with the adult in the US for more than half the year. So 6 months and a day. And the dependent did not provide over half of their own support in 2021. Next slide. How do families claim the CTC? So in 2021, most families automatically received advanced CTC payments. This was $250 to $300 per child per month from July through December. Families who weren't required to file taxes or didn't do so in 2019 or 2020 for other reasons had to take steps to receive the advanced payments. And this was done through the non-filer portal. And everyone to receive the second half of the credit, if they received, whether they received it automatically or they received it through going through the non-filer portal and getting their payment and claiming their payments that way, everyone will need to have filed a tax return this year to receive the second half or the full amount of the 2021 CTC. There are some exceptions to that, and as we get closer to tax season, that's going to be a growing discussion of who can claim the credits after April 18th, and essentially those are the families that we are really trying to target, and the families that are not traditional filers, don't file, haven't filed, and actually need to be told that this is on the table for them to claim. They will have the option to either file after April 18th without having to request an extension or having a penalty, or when the non-filer portal reopens, they can use that instead to claim the credit. And families need help understanding why they should file and how to get help filing, and that's why we're here today. Next slide. This is a timeline for filing 2021 tax returns. As we know, the tax season began on the 24th of January. It will close, as of right now, it's scheduled, the last day to file your taxes, April 18th. As I said, individuals not required to file taxes can continue to file returns throughout 2022, even if they don't request an extension. And we're also now in this time period where the local volunteer income tax assistance centers, the VITA sites, are open, and that we can direct people to receive help in filing their taxes. We are hoping that the simplified online filing portal will reopen again in late May or sometime in May. And this will be, as I mentioned, the place where individuals who are not required to file can claim the CTC and potentially the third economic stimulus payment if they still haven't received that. And the portal will most likely be open through fall of 2022. Next slide. So speaking of free tax assistance and where to send families to claim, to get help in getting their CTC, You can identify a local VITA site for people you're helping using that link right there through Get Your Refund. And we suggest, so we're really pushing people to utilize and contact and find their local VITA sites to refer families to. In addition to that, we also advise letting clients know, or families, individuals, or everyone at your organization be aware that you should call the VITA site before showing up. They might have appointment requirements. They might have capacity issues, things like that, that we just want to be prepared for, or you just want to be prepared for before referring people over. You can call 211 and select the option 1 after choosing your language for information on VITA site near you as well. And for married couples, both individuals must actually go to the VITA site to file their tax returns. Also, going through Get Your Refund, individuals can access free do-it-yourself tax filing services, get free virtual tax filing assistance, including opportunity to discuss their situation with a tax specialist over the phone. Or at this point, they can also find, again, where they can get information on when the non-filer portal opens up in May of 2022, so they can be prepared for that. Next slide. So their different locations have other available tax assistance as well. So along with VITA, AARP Foundation tax aid sites are also available. They also provide free in-person and virtual tax assistance. They're a little more focused on individuals who are over 50 and have low to moderate income. That's the link to locate them. We'll share that as well with you, and you'll also get this full slide deck, so you'll have access to that. And then there's also the low income taxpayer clinics, the LITCs, and these are places that help individuals with low incomes who have tax disputes with the IRS. We have received a good amount of questions around custody issues, or around issues regarding like a grandparent is taking care of the child, but the parent is collecting the CTC, and people want to know what to do. And so this is where we are suggesting people be referred to for free legal and tax advice around issues such as that. Next slide. And free tax assistance, virtual and in person, is available for many families with low incomes, but may not be able to meet everyone's needs. VITA has capacity issues. We know that when we get out of the big city centers, it's much harder to find other sites. So in some cases, families will have to use a paid tax preparer, and they should be careful that preparers are submitting accurate returns on their behalf. This is a link for guidance for individuals around using paid tax preparers. This link is also in our toolkit that you can access to review with clients, with staff, on what to look out for, or what questions to ask if somebody isn't able to find a free tax site and they do need to pay a paid tax preparer, so that they get as much of the money as possible. And obviously we don't want anybody to get scammed, and we want people to find the best possible help that they can find if they have to pay out of pocket for a tax preparer. Next slide. So, and speaking specifically around the issues of ITINs in immigrant families, mixed status families, for families to claim the CTC, as I mentioned earlier, the dependents must have Social Security numbers, but the parents can have a Social Security or an ITIN. To obtain an ITIN, if a family doesn't have one, they must submit Form W-7 with proof of identity and foreign status documents with the tax returns. So this is typically a 2-step process where you prepare the ITIN application and file the application with the tax return. The ITIN application cannot be submitted separately. They can't just file for their ITIN and then go do their taxes. The ITIN application actually has to be attached to the tax return. And what we are also suggesting to individuals is to avoid, because typically to file for the ITIN, submit the Form W-7, you have to mail in personal documents, and we know that there is a backlog at the IRS, and so these documents could be out of commission and out of the hands of families for a long time. So one thing that families can do to avoid this is they can schedule appointments at IRS taxpayer assistance centers to get their copies of these personal documents certified. These IRS taxpayer assistance centers don't do much else. So families should be aware that this is not a place to go to also file their taxes, but they will certify these documents. And we've also heard that it's important that families have the Form W-7 completed before they get there, so that it's ready to go and they just can verify their documents and then have the W-7 form completed to then bring to the VITA site to submit their tax return, or to whoever is preparing their taxes. Again, here's a link from the IRS on where to locate an IRS taxpayer assistance center. And for the Form W-7, a list of required documents and information on expired items, that's the link as well. Next slide. And this is a link of the required documents to file taxes. This is also on our in our toolkit, and a very useful document to help families prepare and know exactly what they need to bring to their appointments to be ready to file their taxes. Next slide. And we also want to mention, talk a little bit about the IRS Letter 6419 around the advanced CTC payments notice that many families are receiving. So the IRS sent to everyone a 6419 letter showing how much they got for the CTC. These letters show how much the IRS thinks they received in the child tax credit, and there's potential that they could be incorrect. So for example, IRS might have mailed a check to a family, but the family may have moved, and then the IRS hasn't updated their records showing the returned check. So, and another thing that the IRS did is that they also sent 2 letters to both members of a married couple with half of the amount received. So, one parent got a letter saying, you got this amount, which is half of the total they actually received, and then the other parent got the other amount, or the other spouse. These should be noted that these are not duplicate letters, and both letters should be used and brought in when filing the tax returns. And we're also recommending that if anyone has any questions around the amount listed on the letter, and if it doesn't match what a family received or what they think they received in advanced CTC payments, they should check with their IRS online account for a more up-to-date amount and use that information when they're filing their tax returns. Next slide. Okay, so next, what I want to go over is some of the common barriers and concerns that have come up, and also how our toolkit helps to address them. Next slide. This past fall, we did a number of focus group with non-filers to discover and understand what some of the barriers, what their concerns were, or people's general understanding of what was actually happening with the CTC. And these are some different lessons that we got from those sessions. So firstly, that people in the sessions responded well to language that emphasized the help the CTC provided for the family as a whole. They did not respond well to findings around long-term benefits to children. They're cautious about overpromising. So these are the things we talked about earlier, the ability to cut child poverty in half and things like that, or the ability to be able to better raise your children. Those messages didn't stick as well, but messages that were a little bit more concrete and about just how the family can address their day-to-day needs, such as, raising children is expensive, the CTC can help you do that, things like that, families responded really well to. And we have previous presentations around this, so if anyone is interested, you can put your information in the chat and we can share that with you as well, so you can get a more full detailed report on our focus groups findings. Additionally, a lot of people didn't realize the CTC was expanded. and that people who weren't eligible in the past now are. Many people believe that they had to work to get the credit. There was a fear about having to pay the IRS back if they weren't entitled to the credit. Fear around owing back taxes. Fear around losing other benefits such as Medicaid or SNAP or TANF, things like that. There were immigration concerns, concerns around language barriers and access. There were questions around claiming a child born in 2021. This was because a child born in 2021, even though you can claim them now in this year, you couldn't claim them in the portal, and you didn't receive an advance payment automatically either. There was difficulty. People expressed difficulty in getting through to the IRS if they had a question, and actually also a general desire for in-person help. So we're going to go over some of these answers to some of these barriers and concerns now. I also like to mention that our toolkit does address many of these things directly in a lot of the different resources that we've put together, many from our partners, as well as an FAQ that's pretty extensive and answers a lot of different questions. And again, you'll have access to all of that. Next slide. So first concern was, does receiving the CTC impact other public benefits? So the answer to that is no. Getting this credit will not change any federally funded public benefit that a family receives, like Social Security, SNAP, childcare subsidies, or WIC. Next slide. Will an individual ever have to pay this money back? So firstly, it's important to note and to say as well to families that the CTC is not a loan. If someone receives payments for a child who is no longer their dependent, they may have to pay that money back, but there are protections in place for those with incomes below 40,000, 50,000 for heads of household, 60,000 for married couples. And there are more but limited protections for those with incomes below 80,000. Those are individuals or non-custodial parents, 100,000 for single head of household, or 120,000 for couples filing jointly. Next slide. What if someone has not filed tax returns in recent years? So people with very low incomes, that's under 18,800 for head of household or 25,100 for married filing jointly, are generally not required to file. Even if they were required to file, generally there's not a penalty if the IRS owes someone a refund, so perhaps from the EITC. And taxpayers can file for the past 3 years to receive the refunds that they are owed, so they can actually still go back and file 3 years previously. And even if someone owes child support or back taxes, we encourage letting them know and giving the messaging that they can benefit from claiming the CTC, because the credit will essentially go towards paying off any of those outstanding debts around child support or taxes first. And if there's a balance, they'll receive any amount left over. If it all goes towards what is owed, that reduces their debt, and that means that they'll be able to actually get the tax credit in future years. Next slide. And will receiving the CTC affect someone's immigration status or ability to get a green card? The answer to that is no. Under the current law, receiving the CTC or other tax credits will not affect an individual's immigration status, their ability to get a green card, or their future immigration plans. Use of tax credits isn't considered a public charge by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration. Next slide. Will the IRS share someone's immigration status with other government agencies? The answer to that is also no. The IRS is forbidden to share an individual's tax information with other agencies. There are limited exceptions around this, and this is related to certain criminal investigations or to determine someone's tax liability. You can reference the IRS website for this. We also strongly encourage that if anyone is coming across or is working with a population that these things might be coming up with, that they are referred to tax experts or legal aid support to get specific answers for their specific situations. Next slide. And again, our resource toolkit, especially the FAQ, addresses these common barriers, common concerns and barriers and others. And you'll be able to look through and check for answers to a lot of these questions through our resources and our partners' resources as well. Next slide. Okay, and next we just want to talk a little bit about CTC outreach and what some best practices are, as well as what resources we have in our toolkit that you may be able to use and implement and are ready to go once you have the link to the toolkits. Next slide. So what have we found out around CTC outreach and what works? So when outreach is integrated into existing programs and communications, that can be really effective. So, and also families receiving multilingual information multiple times as well. Outreach must also include clear referral info with different options for how people can ask questions or get tax prep assistance, you know, especially since a lot of the people that we're trying to reach right now may not file taxes regularly or ever. It's really important to have that next step ready, whether it's referring them to the VITA site or to get your refund or all of that. So it can feel a little less overwhelming and they know exactly what the next steps are. Oh, wait, can you go back just one slide? Okay, and also broad communication is most effective when paired with targeted outreach or follow-up. So communication with high volumes of families while also being able to connect more deeply with those at risk. So kind of bottom up, top down sort of outreach and communications can be really effective. Next slide. And school districts and government benefits agencies are among the most trusted sources of information for families. Text messages, for example, from schools or agencies have been especially effective, although robocalls, emails, and mailers can also be effective. In addition to hearing from trusted community messengers, families may need to hear from tax, immigration, or family law experts, as I mentioned earlier. Next slide. And we've really identified two different levels of effective outreach. So level 1 outreach activities are centered around raising awareness, and level 2 outreach activities are centered around deeper engagement with families. Next slide. So what are some examples of level 1 outreach activities? First is sending mass text messages, robocalls, and or emails. So as I said, texts have proven to be especially effective, but it's helpful to communicate through families through a combination of methods. Here we have 2 sample texts from the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities. We have a sample text and a sample voice message ready to use. Their toolkit with this information is linked within our toolkit. So if your organization or group wanted to do something like this, these are ready to go to just be copied and sent out to communities and families. Next slide. Another thing that could be effective is recording a phone hold message or a video message for waiting room office screens. We know that a lot of these are already in place in a lot of systems. So again, this is another script from CBPP that could be used to populate and to record the whole message or put on a video message for waiting rooms while families are waiting for appointments. Next slide. Hanging posters in waiting rooms and other public spaces, distributing flyers, sending home flyers and backpacks. This is a sample flyer from GMMB and another sample flyer from CBPP. Both are ready to use and both are also in our toolkit and available in multiple languages as well to be able to share. Next slide. And when possible, adding CTC related questions to existing intake forms. If families are already filling out a form, if it's possible to just add a question around CTC to screen for them, that can be really helpful. Also adding flyers and FAQs to resources that are already going out to families. And this is a partial screenshot of our FAQ that we have included in our toolkit. Next slide. And where partners have relationships with state and local benefit agencies or school districts, we encourage them to send out mass communications to beneficiaries and families. We have a number of school outreach resource info sessions going on right now. The link is right there. We'll also share that with you as well if anyone's interested in participating and learning more. We also have a secondary toolkit that's a little more focused on public agencies. And that also will be shared with you, a number of great resources in that as well. Next slide. And finally, sending out a message in a regular newsletter, if you have one, or making posts on social media have also been found to be very effective as well. These are sample social media posts from one of our partners, and we have additional samples also available in the toolkit. Next slide. And then when talking about what level 2 outreach activities can look like, things like holding a phone bank or conducting peer-to-peer texting, or hosting a Q&A with a tax specialist, an immigration attorney, or other subject matter expert can also be really helpful in whatever format, whether in person, Zoom, Facebook Live, whatever works in the community that you're working with, because this can also help to bring the individuals and the people who can answer the questions that families or even staff might have on specific issues or next steps or concerns that that affect communities. Next slide. And on top of that, the ability to help families schedule the VITA appointments. As I mentioned earlier, it's really important to have some sort of next step or know where to refer families and where to go next, so people don't feel overwhelmed and feel like it's a process that they can actually move forward with. Where possible, working in collaboration with local tax sites and partners to make tax prep services available. And that can also include helping coordinate language interpretation, childcare during appointments, transportation to tax sites, things like that. And organizing tax filing or document preparation events, working with VITA volunteers, local universities, or other tax specialist volunteers to host events or to help families prepare necessary documents. Additionally, also where possible, opening up computer labs, things like that for families to be able to come in, especially when time for the non-filer portal becomes available, can also be really useful ways to engage on that sort of level 2, more close to the ground, directly connected with the community. Next slide. And this is a list of some of the things that you'll find in our toolkit. It's not exhaustive. There's more in there, and we're constantly updating and adding things that we believe are useful and can really help. So we have flyers and posters, as we mentioned. We have all sorts of various messaging. We have our FAQ for service providers. We have a social media toolkit. We have the materials to help pick a tax preparer and get ready for appointment, as mentioned earlier. We have a whole section on resources for immigrant families, best practices. We also just recently added a section on foster youth, a lot of different great resources on foster youth there that's available. And then if my colleague Julia, who's on, if I could ask her to pop in the link now for the toolkit in the chat, so you can have access to that. Next slide. And you can also sign up for our child tax credit email list. This is where we send out any sort of notices on upcoming trainings that we're doing, any updates to the toolkit. As we get closer to the April 18th deadline, we will have more new and upcoming information, especially around the non-filer portal and what to do next. And we'll be sharing that out. And we're hoping to host additional trainings in the future as we find out when the portal will open and what next steps are and how to navigate it. We know our partners will probably also be providing trainings and things like that. So a lot of that information comes through the email listserv. So if you're interested, please sign up. I know Julie just popped that in the chat as well. Next slide. And if you are interested, you can get your own unique URL for Get Your Refund to help you track which outreach activities and communications are most effective. If you're interested in that, please feel free to email me and we can get you connected to requesting that. And next slide. Okay, and so we're going to open it up to Q&A. I know there's a few questions already. I also am going to ask Zoe if possible to pop in a quick poll that we want to share with everyone. And if you're able to answer some of the questions on there, is really helpful for us to understand what's useful and what people are using more of in regards to toolkits and things like that. And so,
sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble setting the poll, so this may be something we have to send in the post email.
okay, all right. So let me take a look then at what we have here. I know Julia has been answering some of the questions already. Received an error message. Some people have. Okay. Okay, great. So Lynn, you're able to access the toolkit. Great. And so Cindy's questions are: informal caregivers eligible for the child tax credit? These are individuals who may not have formal custody of the child, grandparent taking care of a child due to parental incarceration, substance use, etc. Yes, they are eligible for the tax credit as long as the child has been with them for at least 6 months and a day. If they are having any sort of issue getting accessing the tax credit because the parent, even though the parent isn't the full-time guardian, is actually receiving the child tax credit in place of them, and they want to figure out what to do, our recommendation for that as well is to go through the LITCs for guidance on next steps and how to access the credit that they are owed. But yes, informal caregivers are eligible for the tax credit. Okay, and I'll give it another minute or so. If anyone has any other questions, please feel free to pop that in the chat. I will also mention, if possible, if anyone could share with us, if you're working with families, please put in the chat how many families you are working with or your organization serves. We're just trying to get an idea of how many people we're outreaching to, so that would be really helpful. Okay, you posted a question at the top of the chat. Let me check for it. Do we have an idea of the demographics and neighborhoods that had the most unclaimed CTC benefits, so we can have a more targeted approach to promotion and outreach? So in terms of, we did try to do a little bit of work around that at the end of last year, and Julia might have some thoughts on this as well. But as far as demographics, what we're looking at is, especially in this next round that's coming up for people who are completely non-filers, we're looking at a lot of Black and Latino families and low-income communities and neighborhoods as being the most unclaimed. And again, that's because a lot of individuals with lower incomes might not be filing their taxes, and might in general, because they don't have to, and have not realized that this is actually has been expanded to include them as well. So I hope that answers your question. As far as a more concrete sort of report or info on that, I don't know, Julia, if you have any thoughts on where else we might be able to refer.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I put in the chat a link from the Tax Policy Center, which kind of compares IRS data and makes sort of imperfect estimates of how many kids per zip code are at risk of missing out of the child tax credit. As Alini said, because they weren't generally required to file taxes. So that certainly isn't perfect. And in some states where there haven't been Medicaid expansions, it's even less helpful. But for example, if you're in New York or in California or in another state, you can click on this and actually look up a zip code for a rough estimate of the number of kids that you're talking about. And if you work in a whole state, that might be a good way of kind of comparing zip codes to get a sense. But as Alini said, it's generally in communities of color, in kind of communities with low incomes, those with a lot of children, that we're really kind of focusing our attention. So hopefully that helps answer the question.
Thank you for that, Julia. I see another question here. We do have low income families. However, there might be challenges in some instances because they do not have social security numbers, right? Families will have to, well, I mean, the parents don't have to have the social. So, but if they get an ITIN or they already have an active ITIN, they can still access the credit and file for it, as long as the children that they're claiming for the CTC also have a social security number. So if it's just a concern about the parents not having a social, there's still a way to claim the credit. It's more important that the children have socials to be able to fully go through. Oh, and Zoe said she can do the poll now, so she'll, yes, thank you, Zoe. Let's see. I'm currently a PG County foster parent and joined this webinar to get more information on claiming children that were in my care for over 6 months. This webinar is very informative. Oh, great. That's great to hear, Lynn. Thank you so much. If a non-biological father files girlfriend's children and the relationship ends, can mom refile the claim credit? If a non-biological father files girlfriend's children and the relationship ends, can mom refile claim the credit? So if the question is that the credit, it was the non-biological father claimed the credit, half the credit last year, the mother can refile. If the mother hasn't filed, I probably need a little more info on this. Has the mother already filed her tax returns? If so, she can amend it. This also sounds possibly if the biological father has received the full credit and the girlfriend wants to now claim the credit because the relationship ends, it also might be an LITC sort of referral. And essentially a lot of these situations, what has to be done is an actual tax return has to actually be filed to prompt next steps on that. Hope that's helpful. Probably need a little more information to get specific on that. Also feel free to email me if you need to collect more information. We'd be happy to help answer that question further. The poll is out, so if anyone still on the call is able to and is interested, please fill out the poll if you get a chance before we finish up today. Okay, Nacogdoches, Texas. Texas did not expand Medicaid rural, right? Right. And we know in rural communities, there's definitely a lot more challenges coming up in terms of accessing the credit or just accessing the resources to get to the next steps to get the credit. Okay, great. Zoe, I can't see the poll results on my end, so I'm not sure if people have answered. Oh, okay, great. Great. Do we have a date approved for when 2022 would tax credit will begin? You mean if the actual credit will continue into 2022? At this time, no. This time, this expansion is only for 2021. And that's why we're really trying to get this information out there and work with anyone who's interested in partnering with us on it, because in the chance that we hope doesn't happen, that this is the only year that people can actually get this expansion, we want to make sure that they get it. We want to make sure that they get access to this money. Okay, great. We answered the Q&A question. I think, yes, that Q&A question's been answered. Okay, if there are no further questions, we will end it here. But again, you will get a follow-up email with all of the links, all the resources, the recording, as well as the resource toolkit and the slide deck. And if anyone has any other further questions or anything comes up, please feel free to reach out to myself. Happy to answer any other questions that you might have. Okay.